911, what is your emergency?
Please send help. Something is coming after me.
Ma'am, tell me your location.
I'm on a trail. I don't know the name. Somewhere off Route 6, near the state forest. Please, I need help.
Okay, I'm getting help to you. Are you injured? Can you tell me what's happening?
There's something out here. I heard it behind me for the last mile. It's not an animal. I don't know what it is. It keeps making this sound like... Oh God. Oh God, it's closer now.
Ma'am, stay with me. Can you see any trail markers?
It's right there! No, 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 no!
Ma'am? Ma'am, are you there? Ma'am, can you hear me?
No, please, no!
The caller was Rachel Dunham, a 29-year-old woman from Ridgeway, Pennsylvania. The trail she chose that day was one she had done dozens of times, a moderate 9-mile loop along a ridge system in the northern section of the forest. She went out on a Saturday morning in early September. The weather was clear, mid-60s, perfect conditions. She told her roommate she would be back by 4 in the afternoon. By 9:15 that evening, she placed a 911 call that lasted less than a minute. On that call, she was already running, already terrified.
Please, I need help. There's something out here. I heard it behind me for the last mile. It's not an animal. I don't know what it is. It keeps making this sound like... Oh God. Oh God, it's closer now.
She told the dispatcher something was following her. She said it had been behind her for over a mile. She said it was making a sound she couldn't identify. And then she said the line that changed everything that followed. It's not an animal. I don't know what it is. Whatever she heard behind her that evening did not fit anything rangers knew. The call ended with a scream, the sound of the phone hitting the ground, and the dispatcher calling into silence.
It's right there! No, 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 no! No, please, no!
But that call was only the beginning. Because when rangers and state police launched the search the next morning, what they started finding in those woods suggested that whatever happened to Rachel Dunham had been happening in this forest for a very long time. The Elk County Sheriff's Office dispatched a team within the hour of the call. Forest Service rangers joined at first light the next morning. By midday Sunday, it was a full-scale operation. More than 40 volunteers, state police K-9 units, and a helicopter flyover of the ridge system. They found her car at the trailhead, locked, nothing unusual inside. They found her day pack approximately 4 miles along the trail. The water bottle was still in the side pocket. Granola bars untouched. Car keys zipped into the front compartment. The pack wasn't thrown or dropped in a panic. It was placed upright against the base of a tree, set down carefully, deliberately. That detail bothered the search team immediately because it didn't match someone fleeing in terror. It raised 2 possibilities. Either she set the pack down before the encounter started, meaning whatever happened began further up the trail, or something else placed it there afterward. Neither answer was comforting. K-9 units picked up her scent from the pack and followed it off-trail, heading northeast into denser forest. The dogs tracked for approximately 600 yards and then stopped. Not lost the scent, stopped. Both dogs sat down and refused to continue. Their handlers reported that the animals became intensely agitated, whining, ears flat against their heads, trembling. One dog had to be physically carried back to the trail. This behavior is documented in certain missing persons cases and is considered highly unusual. Search dogs are trained to work through fear, through difficult terrain, through bad weather. They do not just quit. When 2 dogs independently refuse to go further for no visible reason, handlers take it seriously. The area where the dog stopped had no obvious explanation, no cliff edge, no water crossing, no deadfall blocking the path, just forest. But the dogs would not go further. On the second day, a ranger-led team pushed past the point where the dogs had stopped, following broken vegetation and what appeared to be drag marks in the soft ground. Approximately a quarter-mile further, down in a ravine off the main ridge, they found something that changed the entire tone of the operation. It was a clearing, not natural, roughly 30 feet across. The trees surrounding it had deep scoring marks on the bark, starting at about 6 feet off the ground and running upward to 9 or 10 feet. The marks were vertical, evenly spaced, made by something sharp dragged downward with considerable force. The spacing between the grooves was approximately 3 inches, too wide for a black bear, too uniform and too high for any known predator in the Pennsylvania wilderness. A bear's claw marks are irregular, clustered, and rarely extend above 7 feet. These were precise, parallel, and deliberate. Whatever made them was tall and it was strong. The ground in the center of the clearing was heavily disturbed, soil turned over, leaves pushed aside in a pattern that suggested something large had been moving in that spot repeatedly. A strong, musky smell hung over the area, not decomposition, but something sharp, acidic. Several team members described it as unlike anything they had encountered in decades of working in the woods. One ranger compared it to ammonia mixed with wet soil and something else underneath that he could not name. Scattered around the clearing, they found fragments of clothing and gear that did not belong to Rachel. A torn section of a nylon jacket, faded and weathered, clearly months or years old. A single hiking boot, men's size 11, caked in dried mud. A length of paracord rope with one end frayed as if it had been snapped under extreme force. These items were later checked against missing persons reports in the region. The boot matched the brand and size worn by a man who had disappeared from a trail 14 miles away 3 years earlier. His body was never found. The implication hit the search team immediately. This clearing was not connected to Rachel's disappearance alone. Whatever was using this spot had been using it for years.
When we found that clearing, everything changed. Up until that point, it was a standard search and rescue. After that, nobody said it out loud, but we all knew. We weren't looking for someone who got lost. Something had taken her, and it had been taking others before her.
Once the items in the clearing were connected to a previous disappearance, someone on the team pulled regional records. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Over the previous 15 years, 7 hikers had gone missing within a 20-mile radius of this section of the Allegheny National Forest. Only 2 were ever found. Missing. The first was a man discovered deceased from exposure, 8 miles off trail in a location that made no sense given his planned route. He was an experienced hiker who had filed a detailed trip plan. The terrain between his trail and his body was some of the most difficult in the forest. Steep ravines, dense undergrowth, no game trails. Investigators could not explain how he got there or why he would have traveled in that direction. The second was found alive but incoherent, 12 miles in the opposite direction of where he had been heading. He was discovered with deep lacerations on his arms and back. At the hospital, he told staff that something had chased him. He described it as tall, pale, moving on 2 legs, but wrong. The proportions did not look like a person. The arms were too long. The way it moved was too fast, covering ground in a way that didn't match his stride. He later recanted the statement and refused to discuss it again. He moved out of the county within 6 months. The other 5 were never found, gear left behind, trails that went cold, dogs that would not track. The same story repeated over and over. The disappearances clustered in late summer and early fall, August through October. They happened on different trails, but all within the same general area, the dense old-growth forest along the northern ridge system of the Allegheny Plateau. Rangers had noticed the pattern informally for years. It had been discussed in break rooms, on long shifts, in the quiet moments between searches, but there was never an official connection made between the cases. Each one was filed separately. Lost hiker, presumed accident, case closed.
After the third one, I stopped calling them coincidences. Same stretch of forest, same time of year, same profile. People who knew what they were doing out there. You don't lose experienced hikers on marked trails in good weather 3 times in 5 years without something else going on. But every time I raised it, I got the same answer. There's no evidence. The terrain is dangerous. People make mistakes.
The Allegheny National Forest spans over 500,000 acres. Large sections of the northern interior are essentially unvisited. No maintained trails, no cell service. Terrain so dense and rugged that even experienced woodsmen avoid entire valleys. It is one of the largest tracts of unbroken forest in the eastern United States, and much of it has never been thoroughly surveyed. The region sits on top of an extensive network of natural limestone caves and old mining tunnels left over from the oil and timber boom of the 1800s. Many of these systems are unmapped. Some were explored briefly and then abandoned. Some were sealed shut without explanation. Workers during that era reported strange things underground, sounds that carried through the tunnels with no identifiable source, humming, clicking, vocalizations that did not echo the way normal sounds should in enclosed stone passages. Several mining operations in the northern Allegheny were shut down after workers refused to return. The official records cite safety concerns. The specifics were never documented publicly. The Seneca people, who inhabited this region for centuries before European settlement, had oral traditions about creatures that lived in the deep forests and cave systems of the Allegheny Plateau. They described them as tall, thin, pale-skinned beings that moved silently and hunted at dusk and dawn. Certain ravines, certain cave openings, certain stretches of forest were considered forbidden, not because of terrain, but because of what lived there. These were not campfire stories. They were warnings passed down through generations, specific enough to name locations, specific enough to describe behaviors. In the 1970s, a geological survey team mapping cave systems in the area reported finding large scratch marks on cave walls at depths of over 200 feet. The marks were noted in their field report but never explained. The survey was cut short. The reason given was safety concerns, the same vague language used in the mining records a century earlier. Over the past 2 decades, scattered reports from hunters and hikers in the Allegheny region have described encounters with something they could not identify. The descriptions are remarkably consistent across people who have no connection to each other. Tall, 7 feet or more, pale or grayish skin, bipedal, but with proportions that look wrong, arms too long, hanging past the knees, legs that bend at angles that do not match human anatomy. It moves fast, faster than it should for its size, covering ground in bursts that seem to defy the terrain. And it makes a sound, a low hum, rhythmic, almost vibrating the air around it. The people who report these encounters almost always ask to remain anonymous. Most never report them at all. They tell a friend, a family member, and then they stop going into that part of the forest. The connection to Rachel Dunham's case is difficult to ignore. The claw marks on the trees in the clearing, starting at 6 feet, reaching to 10, the height, the spacing, the force required, the drag marks on the ground, the dogs that would not track. Her description on the 911 call of a sound, a hum, a clicking, that matches what miners reported hearing 150 years ago and what hunters have whispered about for the last 20 years. Whatever this is, it is not new. People have been encountering it in this forest for generations. The only thing that changed with Rachel's case is that for the first time, someone recorded what it sounds like to be caught by it. The search for Rachel Dunham was officially called off after 9 days. She was listed as a missing person. No remains were ever recovered. Her phone was found 40 yards off trail in thick brush. The screen was cracked, but the device was functional. The 911 call audio was preserved on county records. The clearing with the scoring marks was photographed and logged, but never formally investigated beyond the initial documentation. The items found there were collected as evidence, but the case remained classified as a missing persons case. Not a criminal investigation, not a wildlife incident. Just another name on a list that keeps getting longer. The trail where Rachel disappeared remains open to the public. There are no warnings posted, no advisories, nothing to indicate that 8 people have now vanished from this corridor over the past 15 years. The Allegheny National Forest receives over 1.5 million visitors a year. The vast majority stick to the popular trails and never venture deeper than a mile from a road. But every year, a few push further, into the old growth, into the ravines, into places where the canopy blocks out the sky and the forest goes quiet in a way that does not feel natural. The ranger who found the clearing still works those woods. He goes out 3 or 4 times a week. When asked about the case, he said this: Rachel Dunham knew that forest better than almost anyone. She had walked that trail dozens of times. She did everything right, and on a clear September evening, something in those woods caught up to her. The 9-minute 911 call proved what rangers had feared for years. Something is in the Allegheny National Forest. It has been there for a very long time, and it is still there.
There are places in that forest I will not go alone anymore, not because of bears, not because of the terrain, because I've read those reports, I've heard that recording, and I've stood in that clearing and felt something watching me that I could not see. Whatever is out there, it has been there a lot longer than us, and it is not done.